Paul, my friend, long-time colleague, Brian, we are going to give the presentation here this afternoon. And I'm up first. So, number one, one has trouble saying very warm welcome to you on a day like this. But anyway, it is a warm welcome. Perhaps it'd be a little more pleasant if it wasn't quite so hot outside. But in some ways, this aspect of climate change is an aspect of the great change that we're going to talk about in detail today. Just about all of us can recognize that there is change in various stages taking place in many different ways all around the world. And in some ways these are quite frightening. People especially relate it to economic change. And this is filling people quite naturally with a sense of fear. And we're also seeing it in terms of change in our climate. And even if you are living in some of the most remote areas of the world where you don't have access to the internet, probably don't even have access to electricity, don't have access to a newspaper, you're still able to see that there is change taking place. The whole climate around you is changing. Perhaps through the disappearance of bees or flowers that used to grow, or glaciers. This is another aspect of the great change that is literally touching all of our lives. And yet it's something much bigger than this. One way I was thinking about it just yesterday is that if you know what I mean by an odometer, and you have an odometer that actually works. My last car had an odometer that didn't work. It's one of those things which counts your miles. And occasionally from time to time you look at your odometer and you say, oh, look at that, it's about to change to a new whole 1,000 or something. And the whole, the 999 is going, all these things are going to change, these cogs are going to change, and it's going to go to 1,000 or even perhaps 10,000 or 20,000. And you're going to see all of these little cogs being changed together at once. And it's a great thing to kind of watch while you're driving along. But this change that we're about to undergo is bigger than all of that. It's the biggest change that's ever undertaken on this earth. And while some of these little cogs that are turning, economic cogs, political cogs, even climate change to a certain extent, are man-made, the fundamental change is far bigger than us. It's not about us, because as, shall we say, yogis have always understood, everything is living, everything is conscious, everything is a part of something that we call God, we refer to as God. And the way they describe creation or manifestation is the great outbreathing of God into manifestation. And all of manifestation is now under a process we know as evolution, going back to that source from which it came. So change is inherent within the whole universal system. When I say that everything is conscious, at least this is something that's understood by yogis and spiritually minded people, it may be difficult, in fact it is difficult, for so-called intellectual people to think of the earth or the sun, even the galaxy, as being a living being. Difficult for them to think of a tree, well perhaps of a tree they can, but certainly a planet and the sun as actually being living, conscious, intelligent things. And yet to the spiritually minded person, it's virtually self-evident that everything is living. And this is perhaps more than anything the most fundamental aspect of the great change that is taking place. It's a realization, at least as it relates to humanity, to come into a far deeper, a far richer realization of what we really all are a part of. And as we move into this new world, so to speak, that will perhaps be its predominant feature, that we will realize that what is in me is in you and is in literally everything, which we can call spirit, and it's alive, and it's guiding and steering us all back to this source from which we came. And so that really is what we're mainly going to be speaking about later this afternoon, which will be covered by, as I say, will be covered more by Brian. The PowerPoint presentation that we have prepared actually goes into quite some depth, the deeper aspects, if you like, of the teachings of our spiritual organization, the Aetherius Society. And some of this you may not, those of you who are here for the first time, probably won't quite fully understand, and no disrespect for that at all. So in the question and answer session, we will have opportunity for you to ask some of those questions. Now, I did mention that part of this change is man-made, and there's another thing I came across fairly recently, and I think it describes this quickening that we're going through very well. It's something that was written by a man called Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who you may know was an astronaut. He was the sixth man to walk on the moon. And this really does sum up so much of the development, tremendous development that we've seen, certainly in science and technology on our world in the last 100 years. Which is an aspect of this change, but don't let me misguide you, because the fundamental aspect is a spiritual aspect to all of this change, underlying everything. But nonetheless, I think it sums the situation up very well. Dr. Edgar Mitchell, writing fairly recently, he said, "My great-grandparents moved from Georgia to Texas in the 1870s, following the Civil War in the United States, in order to begin a new life in the West. They traveled in covered wagons pulled by horses and drove a small herd of cattle for breeding stock. The railroads were not yet complete in spanning the West, and automobiles had not been invented. My father was born shortly after the Wright brothers' first flight in 1903, and I went to the moon on January the 31st, 1971. From covered wagons to a spacecraft to the moon in less than a century. Hardly more than the span of a human lifetime. And the pace of innovation and invention has continued to increase. So the big question is, where is this taking us as a global civilization?" And I think it's that question that we will attempt to answer here this afternoon. Where is it taking us as a civilization? Well, to perhaps go into our first slide, there's nothing new in terms of prophecies and traditions about this time in which we're now living, and it's covered by virtually every spiritual tradition, every faith and indigenous peoples. And so let me just read some of these, what some of these faiths have said. Prophecies go back literally thousands of years, certainly hundreds of years. Firstly, we have in the Hindu tradition, thousands of years ago, the Hindu scribes warned of a dark age, which they called Kali Yuga. They wrote of the destruction and strife which will arise in those days, which many believe to be the period we are now living through. They spoke of an avatar, that's someone coming from another world, who will come to establish a new spiritual order. And just as we have, I should probably say, so many good things happening. I mean, we have come together as one planetary race, if you like, in certain ways, but at the same time, not in spiritual ways. We can see, we don't need to go into this here and now, but we have war, we have strife, we have fear, we have tyranny, still raging right across our world, just about wherever you look. And that's why this period is regarded as the Kali Yuga, and we'll see in a moment, it's a time when we can actually destroy our planet. In ancient Greece, there we have a man called Hesiod, who in the 8th century BC, nearly 3,000 years ago, spoke of the final days of warfaring and social upheaval in which Zeus, who was the father of the gods, perhaps himself an avatar, would destroy humanity's wickedness. The Mayan prophecies, which are well known, focus on December the 21st this year, 2012, when their calendar ends with cataclysm, flooding and other natural disasters. This is understood by some to be followed by a great new age on this earth. Some Mayan traditions speak of the return of gods. We have here the Aztecs, also from Central America, who prophesied the return of Quetzalcoatl and the ancient ruler of the Toltecs to bring in a reign of peace and spiritual order. The Hopi Indians from North America down here in the southwest predict the arrival of Pahana at the time of great purification, who they say will travel to other planets. And this will be when the wicked will be destroyed and a new age of peace will dawn. Very much the same theme running through all of this. The Old Testament prophesies the coming of a Messiah, who some believe to have been Jesus, obviously Christians, but according to the Jewish calendar has yet to come. The New Testament says that the Son of Man will come to earth in a cloud, which is an interesting way to describe perhaps a flying saucer, to bring redemption after a period of distress and natural disaster. And of course we're seeing a dramatic increase in the number of natural disasters taking place all around the world. And of course the Son of Man, the Christians expect this to be the second coming of Christ. So, some Sufis prophesy that a Messiah named Qadir will appear at a time of catastrophe to bring world peace. Ancient Egyptian legends speak of Osiris coming to herald in a new age. Zoroastrians believe in the coming of Soxian at the time of judgment to bring salvation and perfection to the world. And they say Soxian will be the one who will make existence brilliant. I think it's a wonderful phrase, will make existence brilliant. This, in so ways, this is why it is in so many ways Kali Yuga, because few people on earth, and really I think if anybody's really conscious, it's very difficult to be happy on earth at this time. Certainly to be joyful, because there is so much pain and suffering and fear pervading our world, and that if one has any sensitivity, one has to be very conscious and sympathetic towards that suffering and working rightfully to relieve that suffering. But here they speak of coming to make existence brilliant, which is what it should be. It says a wonderful line in the I Ching, if you're familiar with the I Ching, we should shine like the sun, and that is our true heritage. The divine spark of God is within each and every one of us. And this is what this great change is about, the realization, the refinding of that spark of God. Nostradamus, I'm sure you're all familiar with him. He lived, I think, roughly in the 1500s in France, prophesied the coming of a Lord from the sky, and there he predicted, at least the understanding was, in the symbolic year of 1999, which by all accounts didn't happen, at least not then. And lastly, more recently, the Theosophists, started by Madame Blavatsky just over 100 years ago, roughly 100 years ago. They speak of an imminent new age when the spiritual hierarchy of earth, that's the ascended masters, will come forth among men, and the Lord Maitreya, depicted here, will appear among us, and it's one of the ascended masters, a very prominent member of the spiritual hierarchy of earth. So that's what other faiths and traditions have said, as I say, literally hundreds, even thousands of years ago, about this period in which we are now living, have entered. But what we're going to focus on, as I'm sure comes as no great surprise and shock to you this afternoon, is the prophecies that have been given through the Aetherius Society, specifically through the founder of this organization, a Western master of yoga called Dr. George King. And so I'd just like to speak a little bit about Dr. King, who he was, and how it came about that he became literally a voice, a medium for masters both upon this earth and even, well, primarily, even beyond this world. And I guess just to touch on that, again with this development in science and technology, physicists are now recognizing that there are other levels of dimension in quantum physics. This would have been completely found unbelievable just a century or two ago, certainly to the intellectual. And so we're discovering, not just in a spiritual sense, but even in terms of science, that there are other levels of existence. And just as the discovery that the world was not flat but round revolutionized thinking on this earth, and that we were not the center of the universe, that we were not the center of our solar system, had a profound effect, stirring up the great Renaissance on this earth. And of course, even though we thought it was flat, it was never the case. And likewise, just because we're now discovering that there are other levels of dimension doesn't mean that now they exist. They've always been there. It's only that we're coming into this greater realization. So if we could just look at this time in which we're now living, this period, as I say, when we're now able to destroy our civilization, we would say, certainly in the Aetherius Society, we're not alone in saying this, that we've done this before in a previous civilization of Atlantis, and even before that in Lemuria. But if there were two great developments in the last 100 years, one of them would be, by all accounts, the discovery of the atom, or the ability to split the atom and to develop out of that the capability to destroy our civilization. And this is the greatest threat, in spite of all the other threats that we have, the greatest threat to our civilization at this time, the ability to destroy ourselves. And I think we're all familiar with the atom bombs dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima at the end of the Second World War. I never get tired of saying this because it never ceases to amaze me that we went on to develop the hydrogen bomb. And one hydrogen bomb is the equivalent of 1,000 atom bombs, the size of those dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And in 1958, the Soviets and the Americans tested 110 hydrogen bombs in that one year, 1958, the equivalent of 110,000 atom bombs, the size of those dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So we're living in very, very dangerous times. But on the other side of the equation, when this was being developed in the 1940s and more so in the 50s and 60s, it was a time when we were being visited by flying saucers. Again, not for the first time in our civilization, but in great numbers. And there were right across certainly this country and other countries, there were many flying saucer groups because so many people were having the experience of seeing these craft, and people still see them to this present day. And this again is just one aspect, and a very important aspect of this great change that we are now going through in a wonderfully inspirational way to help open us up to the reality that there is more going on, thank goodness, in the universe than just this mess that we have here on planet Earth. And another aspect of this, another phenomenon that we're experiencing at this time, of course, is crop circles. It's my thinking, I'm sure I'm not alone, but that crop circles, which are much more common, one might say, and far more apparent, far more obvious than flying saucers. Flying saucers tend to be quite fleeting, and by their very term, unidentified. One is unable to sort of be categorical in majority of cases as to what that was. But there's nothing to deny these phenomena that are appearing with greater and greater complexity, it seems, with each passing year. Certainly some of them are man-made, but when you look at some of these are not when they're being made overnight. sometimes in just a few minutes, in absolute darkness. There's no way that these are being made by humans. And there's an obvious intelligence besides the beauty behind it all. And I think, as I say, one key element of flying saucers is to provoke and prompt humanity to start thinking in greater, broader terms. And perhaps the most amazing thing about crop circles is that we don't. And the media turn a blind eye and a deaf ear, or if they do pay attention to them, they do so with scorn and ridicule. And that is tragic. And not only tragic, bizarre that should be the case. Anyway, it's into this present day age that the teachings given by the cosmic masters have been given. And one channel whom they deemed primary terrestrial mental channel was the founder of the Aetherius Society, a man who we know as Dr. George King. Dr. George King, as I mentioned, was a master of many forms of yoga. He was born in England in 1919 as a young man, literally at the age of 20, ripe age to serve in the Second World War. His whole background, childhood and education had taught him, and mainly he taught himself, that it was quite wrong to kill against all natural and spiritual laws. But at the same time, he recognized that Nazism was an evil force, fascism. And so he served in the fire service in London as a section leader during the Blitz, when he witnessed firsthand this terrible, literal slaughter of innocent civilians during that horrific period. And I think that as much as anything caused him to delve deeper into the mysteries of life, trying to understand man. Why is man so complicated? Why is man behaving in this bizarre, cruel, wicked way? And having been very psychic as a child, he turned his attention to the study and science of yoga, which certainly in Britain in the 1940s was quite unusual. And he didn't dabble in yoga. He studied it with great intensity, which is to say up to 8 hours a day over a 10-year period. And it was with such intense practice that it caused an energy, a force that we all have in the base of the spine, we'll get into this a little bit later this afternoon, called the Kundalini, a Sanskrit word, to rise, to naturally rise through a channel we all have in our spine called the Sushumna channel, to give it its Sanskrit yogic term. And as it did so, it opened chakras, psychic centers through the body, and he was able to raise this Kundalini right up to the highest centers, the Christ center and the crown center, which enabled him to have the experience of samadhi, to give it its Sanskrit term. We tend to think of it more in the West as cosmic consciousness, where we know that all have the experience of knowing that all life is absolute oneness, and that all life, as mentioned before, is conscious. All life is, everything is alive. Everything is a part of this same oneness that pervades all of creation. And it also brings about a state of ecstatic bliss. And so Dr. King, with this intense practice through various forms of yoga, won't go into those here and now, was able to attain this state. The question which he needed to be answered was what was his role going to be? Because one doesn't just have this state to enjoy it solely for its own benefit. It gives one a profound, literally global responsibility. And that question was answered for him one Saturday morning in May the 8th, in 1954. When he was a young bachelor, he was about 35 years of age, living here in this part of London called Maida Vale, number 19 Clifton Gardens, I believe, if any of you ever are in London. I have to say I've made a pilgrimage to that building, 19 Clifton Gardens in Maida Vale. And it was there, as I say, one Saturday morning in 1954 that he heard a voice. And it was very clear, it was very stark. He describes it as being like a pistol shot. And this voice simply said, "Prepare yourself. You are to become the voice of interplanetary parliament." And that's all that it said. And it goes without saying he did not understand that. But he did know, with his tremendous yogic experience and practice, that what he had heard was for real. It was no psychic apparition. And he also knew intuitively that this was the moment that he had been waiting for, this sign, this indication as to what his role was to be, even though he didn't understand how that role would manifest. Prepare yourself, you are to become the voice of interplanetary parliament. Anyway, a week later, after probably 6 sleepless nights, he went back into meditation, and he locked the door of his small apartment, and he said, "I am not leaving this apartment until I understand and know what that statement was all about." And it was during this state of meditation when a yoga master he recognized from India literally manifested, walked through the locked door and sat down opposite him and explained to him what that contact had been. And as I said earlier on, he was not the only such individual who was being contacted, although he, as I say, he was designated primary terrestrial mental channel, and he was given various instructions as to how to be able to gain telepathic rapport with beings operating on other dimensions beyond this Earth, primarily from other planets within our solar system, Mars, Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter. And this is how the Aetherius Society began. It grew out of Dr. King going into what we call a positive yogic somatic trance, and masters who literally spoke through him. And this afternoon Brian has prepared several, I believe about half a dozen fairly short extracts of these masters speaking through Dr. George King, relevant in the case of this presentation to this great change. And here you see him here. This was very what happened in the early in the mid 1950s. Dr. King would go to this large hall in London known as Caxton Hall, where there'd be audiences of several hundred people, and he would literally go into this positive yogic somatic trance. You can see him there either going into trance or perhaps coming out of trance, which is an extremely difficult state to enter. And it was in Caxton Hall where several of certainly the early transmissions were given through Dr. George King, speaking to humanity about these times and about the great change that we're all going to be experiencing on this earth in one form or another, warning us of the consequences of our misuse of atomic power, and at the same time giving to us a remarkable and wonderful spiritual message, in keeping with the spiritual message of all the great avatars who have come to this earth. There was nothing in that sense specifically new about it. Perhaps the only thing that was new was that it was obvious, or we were made aware that this was coming from intelligences from beyond this earth, which is, as I say, where we are headed. In 1959, Dr. King came to America, which is where he spent the majority of the rest of his life. He visited England many years. During the summer, he'd go back for a tour of the country, but this was his primary residence. And since 1965, the building next door was his home, his primary home. And the picture you see there is of Dr. King. I think the picture's from the late 1960s, perhaps early 70s. Sitting in what we call the transmission room, which is in the house next door, there with perhaps the best professional recording equipment that the Aetherius Society could buy. On that note, we're a non-profit organisation. We're not a rich organisation. We're not here to take your money. We welcome the donations, of course, but we're here to give out the spiritual message. We're a non-profit spiritual organization. But certainly those were very expensive microphones and with reel-to-reel tape recorders, which were linked next to in the house next door, because these messages were of profound importance. And this whole message is of profound importance. And if you go away this afternoon having a better understanding of the reality of this teaching that's being given, then then your life hopefully will be changed, and changed for the better, and given perhaps a greater sense of purpose and focus of what life really is all about, which comes back to raising the Kundalini, which we'll go on to later on. So anyway, this is what we're going to be focusing on: the transmissions, the teachings, and that were given through Dr. King about this great change that we are going through, the planet is going through, even the solar system is going through, even the galaxy is going through. We're all a part of it, and so I think that's as much as I need to do in terms of introduction to the Aetherius Society. It's now my pleasure to turn over to Brian, who will take us through the rest of this presentation.
Well, thank you, Paul. It's a good introduction. Now, my part is, as Paul mentioned, I guess it requires a little bit of knowledge about the Aetherius Society. So hopefully Paul filled in the blanks enough. So this picture here, we see what is the great change. And basically, the change is a movement from Earth as we know her right now to the new world. And that is really what the masters have coined it, is the new world. And this is going to take place after the initiation of Earth, which has actually already happened, but it's she's received her energy, but it's going to take a while to kind of manifest this energy. But it's going to be a very, very different place than what it is now. And that means a physically different place. And so the main aspect of this great change is this. It's the Mother Earth is the main aspect, not mankind. And mankind tend to be very kind of self-focused. And so we tend to think of ourselves as being the most important aspect of the universe. And so the great change has to be about us. It's not about us. It's about the Mother Earth. But because the Earth is going to change in many very definite ways, it's going to have very direct consequence on mankind. And that is really what this great change is about, is how mankind is going to change to be able to live with this new world. But I'd like to introduce our first extract. And this is an extract about 4 minutes long. This is one of these transmissions received by Dr. King from an intelligence. This one is Master Aetherius. And he entitled this particular transmission, The New World, and he gave it in England on June 1st, 1960. And I've kind of edited it here and there so that it gets the key points. And so I think you'll understand in a real short, potent way what the Cosmic Masters are saying this great change will be. So let's listen to that for about 4 minutes.
Things upon the surface of your world are now changing. This great change will result in the cosmic initiation of this earth as an entity, and the direct result of this will be a great golden millennium of peace, which will be enjoyed by some, but not all. The time of your trial is now, at this very moment. Gradually, the ionization units around this earth of yours will be taken down. This will allow a more complete cosmic bombardment of the surface of this earth of yours. Higher frequencies of light into the ultraviolet spectrum will be freer to bombard the actual surface of Terra. This energy bombardment will be tantamount to a cosmic initiation of the planet as an entity. All vibrations as a result of this concentrated bombardment of energy will be stepped up to such an extent that only those are ready for a residence within the new world could possibly live here. Gradually, mankind in the new world will learn to tap the great all-pervasive energy radiating from the logos of the planet as an intelligence. He will be able to bathe himself in this great light and thereby preserve his physical structure throughout the centuries. He will learn how to cause procreation without a physical contact. He will learn how to communicate with all the worlds. He will conquer all space. He will be taken to the far ends of the galaxy. This is the new world. This is a picture of the new age as it will be. There is not a force in all the worlds which can alter this, which can put one blemish upon it, not even the foolishness of mankind. For those who turn away from their present opportunities to enter this new age, to reside upon this new world, there will be rebirth upon a younger planet and a history similar to that which mankind has already experienced.
So it's a pretty good encapsulation, isn't it, of the new age and what's going to happen. And it's, on the one side, of course, it's wonderful, because it's going to be a tremendous new world that many people will be able to enjoy. And it'll be a much better place. We'll be able to communicate with all the different worlds in this solar system and beyond. We'll be able to actually travel to other parts of the galaxy. We'll be able to use the energy from the Mother Earth herself to allow us to live in our physical structure for hundreds, if not thousands of years. it'll be a tremendous place for the inhabitants to live. But as you also heard, the new world is the Mother Earth once she has accepted this initiation, once she has risen her vibrations to her new evolutionary status. But the side part about that is that there'll be no ionosphere. And that's a problem. If you took away the ionosphere right now, mankind wouldn't last. There'll also be a shift on the axis. If that happened right now, again, there'll be massive calamity. And so the situation is, on the one side, fantastic. The great golden age, the Mother Earth, after waiting hundreds of thousands of years for mankind, she held herself back, trying to allow as many of the people on Earth to raise themselves to withstand this. And she's been told now she cannot wait any longer. And so it's about to take place. When I say about, we'll get into that in a minute. About's not next year or not December 21st, but relatively soon. But the problem is that if it were to happen December 21st, there would be virtually nobody who would be staying back on the New World. And so the question is, how and when is the New World going to manifest? Because clearly the people who are not able to withstand this, as Master Aetherius said, will have to be removed from the Earth through natural death, natural causes, but not reborn here as normal reincarnation. They'll be reborn on another planet, a planet where they will go through a similar history as we've gone through here. Not nearly as nice as the Golden Age, which will take place here. The question is how and when. How are we going to get as many of the inhabitants of Earth up to speed? How are we going to speed up the evolution so that as many people as possible can withstand this change that the New World will take place, or will happen in the New World? And that is really the dilemma of the Cosmic Masters, because they have such tremendous compassion. As Paul said, as we evolve, we develop compassion, a realization of the oneness of all things. And so these great ones who feel this great compassion for mankind know how fantastic it will be to stay on Earth, and how tragic it would be if, with a little bit of effort, you can stay on Earth rather than go to another world and relive what we've been going through for millions of years. And so they are desperately trying to get as many people to evolve in this short span of time. And they have developed what they call the cosmic plan for the salvation and enlightenment of humanity, mankind actually. And so that really is their terminology for the Great Change. Now at this point I wanted to just take a quick break and remember what this evolution is. And Paul touched upon it. He's kind of bandy about the idea of evolution. Well, we're all one. We're all part of God. We're all going back to this great source of all things, the Absolute. And there's certain ways of doing that. And Earth is a classroom where we're meant to learn one main lesson. And Paul again touched upon that. That main lesson is raising the Kundalini from the base of the spine through Sushumna to the top of the head. And that's our main lesson. That's it. Seems like it's very easy. Why we've been here, we've been told for 18 million years. Why is it taking us that long to get this one lesson? And of course, there's more to it than just that. There's another side to it. The Master Jesus said it very eloquently, that man dwelleth in a world of selfishness, God dwelleth in a world of selfless expansion. So there really is two poles of the evolution. One side, you develop an understanding of the divinity of all things, and you dedicate your life to helping everyone else, because we're all one. And as you do that, you start to open up the psychic centers and you start to raise the Kundalini. Conversely, if you kind of focus on raising the Kundalini and opening the psychic centers, then you develop this sensitivity that all are one and you should do service. And so it's kind of an ongoing back and forth evolution. But that's the main thing. So that is the goal of the Cosmic Masters, is to get, and if you look at mankind, we're so far from them. Most people don't believe in the Kundalini. And that's our main lesson. And those who know about it, it's kind of a vague thing. And that's our main lesson. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge to get these 7 billion people on the physical plane. Don't forget there's also other realms. Must be 20, 30 billion people on the planet. You try and get as many of those people, many of us lot, if you want, to understand about Kundalini, to start helping others, giving service, being selfless, not selfish, so that we can start to evolve. It's a hell of a challenge. Hell of a challenge. And don't forget, we've been working on it. Well, we've actually been holding ourselves back. This is time to step up evolution. That's, you know, we have to do something ourselves. We have to take responsibility ourselves to increase our evolution. They can help as much as they can, but it's up to each one of us, is it not, to learn the lesson we have on Earth. But now, Oscar's put together, this is the timeline. And this is, again, based on what the Cosmic Masters have given us. And so, the cosmic plan for the salvation and enlightenment of mankind, I'm kind of putting out there at about 1,000 years. And that's based on a couple of things that the Cosmic Masters have told us. They have promised that the third satellite, which I'll get to in a minute, is in orbit of Earth, off and on 4 times a year, for the next 1,000 years. Another satellite called A1, which was put into orbit by the Adepts, again, is very essential for the cosmic plan. That too has been placed in the orbit, we've been told, for 1,000 years. And so I'm kind of maybe making a bit of a deducive jump here, but I'm saying to myself and to you, you're listening, that this great change will be about 1,000 years. Now, that might sound like a long time, because our lives are fairly short. 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years for a life. But if you think that we have been on this planet, we've been told, for 18 million years, it's not that long. Well, 1,000 years is not that long at all. It's like a snap of the finger. If you think that you live, say, for 70 or 80 years on the physical plane, when you pass away, you might live 30 or 40, 50 years on the other realms. So we're talking, what, maybe 6, 7 lives. It's not that long. I also wanted to read over a fascinating quote, which kind of gives an idea of their concept of time. I love this. This is called, appropriately enough for today, The Plan. This was given back on May 30th, 1959 by Mars Sector 6. Let's read through this. You have already been informed on numerous occasions that the great and exalted Lord of Venus, the Senate Kumara, some of you may have heard of him, came into orbit of Terra some 18 million of your years ago. You've already been informed that but a short time ago, this mighty one left Shambhala to return to Venus. This is so. Now while the Lord of the Flame, the Senate Kumara, was in Shambhala, great power was released to the goddess, upon which you like microbes, cling. This release of power has guaranteed for you, the human microbe, certain definite experiences which could not have been offered to you under any other conditions prevailing throughout the whole galactic system. During this time, Adamic man, where the Adam and Eve came, that story. During this time, Adamic man had evolved into the species which inhabit Terra this day. The turning point had been reached. The great ones thought, and as a result, certain specially trained adepts were sent to Terra. Adepts such as Krishna, Buddha, and the Venusian you call Jesus. Karma was balanced by their direct intervention. I just wanted to just stop there just for a minute. And again, it's important to appreciate that we've been here for a long time, 18 million years, and we have a lot of great beings who've been working extremely hard and holding themselves back to help us. The Mother Earth, she's held back her initiation for hundreds of thousands of years. The ascendant Kumara left Venus, his home planet, and came here to help us evolve. And he was here not for 1,000 years. He was here for 18 million years. Imagine holding yourself back for another species for 18 million. You can't comprehend it. Because to us, 1,000 years is like forever. But this is the point. So after the Great Ones sent these adepts, Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, right? And this is what the text says now. This secondary move, sending these adepts, this secondary move was closely followed by another move, that of sending certain adepts with highly specialized training to Terra. These adepts are among you this night. Some work in silence, others, obeying their orders to the letter, work more openly. But listen to that terminology, shortly followed. So in their concept of time, shortly followed was 2,000 years. The Master Jesus came 2,000 years ago. Lord Buddha 2,500 years ago. Krishna over 3,000 years ago. So these ones were shortly followed by the adepts who were on Earth just recently, 2,000 years later. So again, 1,000 years, not long, not long. So the whole point of the cosmic plan, as I think that you should understand by now, is to speed up our evolution. That's the point. We got to get us to a place which we can withstand no ionosphere, to make it in a real simple way, in a short period of time. Not that long, a few hundred years. But one of the first moves of modern times was mentioned just recently in this text I read, was the exit of the ascendant Kumara. And he left Earth, left Shambhala, which is the Christ center of Earth, this great satellite in the etheric realms of Earth. He left that place, and he was replaced by the Lord Buddha. Interestingly enough, he was replaced recently in 1957-ish by the Lord Buddha. So if you think about the importance of this time, here was the ascendant Kumara was here for 18 million years, just left. Just in 1957, just left. And the initiation of Earth, which we'll get to in a moment, happened in less than 10 years later, 1964. And the initiation of Earth was a time when she received more energy than since she was created, which was over 3.5 billion years ago. So these are two crucial things happening within just 10 years of each other. The exit of the Lord of Venus from Shambhala, 1957, and the initiation of Earth, 1964. So clearly, this is an extremely important period of time that we're living in. Next thing that happened was the activation of the 3 adepts. As I read out, 3 more adepts were sent, or more adepts were sent, 3 of which we'll speak of more in depth, as well as Dr. King. And the three adepts and Dr. King were crucial in this cosmic plan for the salvation and enlightenment of mankind. Crucial. We'll get to that as we go forward. Next thing was the introduction of some energy sources to kind of help us. Again, the whole point is to push our evolution along, to raise our kundalini, to raise our awareness of oneness for each other, increase our ability and our desire to be of service. And starting in 1955, they sent and continue to send a satellite called satellite number 3, which is in orbit right now. And this satellite has the ability to send energy directly to people who are using energy in a positive way for others. People who are helping others or growing themselves spiritually. And what a brilliant way of speeding up evolution. Because when you think about it, most people on Earth have a certain degree of selfishness. That's one reason why we're stuck where we are in materialism. We want all the goodies for ourselves or our family or our group or our whatever, and to help everybody else, kind of thing. That's the way we are. And if you can, and again, of course, karma is very exact. As you sow, so shall you reap. So if you are constantly wanting things for yourself, that's holding you back karmically. That's holding you back in your evolution. But imagine every time that you send out energy for someone else, you get something back. But imagine if when you send out energy for somebody else, that's magnified 3,000 times. What a brilliant way of speeding up karma. So the individual has to do something themselves. They have to pray, or give healing, or help others, go to services. But when they do that, they're speeding up their evolution. Brilliant, brilliant plan. And another energy source were 19 holy mountains. Another beautiful way of getting people to leave the city, with all the materialistic clutter in our minds, get out of the city, go to these 19 mountains, and you can send out tremendous energy, which was designed specifically for us at our level of evolution. We can tap into this energy. We have one on Mount Baldy, and go there, and you can feel the energy. And you pull this energy out, and you send it out again to help people. Another potent way of speeding up our evolution. Or shall we say, speeding up the evolution of those who are ready to have their evolution speeded up. Because, you know, there won't be 30 billion people on the New World. It's just a fact. 12 blessings. The 12 blessings is a tool that you can use with these two energy sources. And the 12 blessings was given to mankind by the Master Jesus through Dr. King as primary terrestrial mental channel. And it's designed to do two things. One is to start giving thanks to all the beings that have been helping us for 18 million years. Start giving thanks to them. The Mother Earth, the mighty Sun, the galaxy, the planetary ones, the list goes on. And also, after each one of those, you then give love and light to all the people on Earth that need it. Beautifully balanced set of prayers, a balanced mystic practice to again speed up our evolution. Shortly after these things happened, 1964, the main event, initiation of Earth. Now I kept the material on this fairly brief because I figured most people would know about it. I miscalculated. But basically the initiation of Earth was when the goddess Earth received more energy than she has ever received since her inception as a planet 3.5 billion years ago. But she is, and she was forced virtually. She was told by the karmic lords, you have to accept this energy. You have to take your initiation into a higher state now. So she received the energy, but she's so compassionate that she is refusing to use the energy. She's holding it within herself. And again, she won't be allowed to do that forever either. But that's why July 8th, 1964 came and went, and the world didn't notice anything. Because she accepted this energy, and she's now holding it within herself. So again, she's giving the cosmic masses as much time as they possibly can to try and kick us in the rear and get us going with our evolution. Then right after the primary initiation of Earth, the Great Wars took place. Operation Carmelite and the Alien Mission. In essence, through our 18 million years of living on Earth, through Lemuria and Atlantis and now present-day civilization, because we've been so remedial, nice way of saying it, backward in our evolutionary progress, selfish, bloodthirsty, one could call it that, we've also created a extremely powerful, we had created extremely powerful centers of evil, especially one individual we used to call Satan, who was in the lower astral realms, and we're told that these entities virtually created the materialistic society in which we now live. It was brilliantly designed to hold us back from our very simple evolutionary plan of raising the Kundalini and caring for each other. But through this development of materialism and other things, and if you're interested, I can read the statement of exactly how the dark forces work in the question and answer period. But in essence, for now, let's just say that Satan and his cronies, if you want to call it that, in the lower realms, extremely powerful, because they've been built up. Every bad thought you have, or every bad act you do, every fearful thought as well, would tend to feed the beings in the lower astral realms. So they became incredibly, incredibly powerful. And they were holding us back, holding back our evolution. And it was decided, well, actually, I'll let you, I'll listen to that. We have a next extract which explains why these three adepts were brought to Earth. And this actually was a continuation of that extract that I read earlier about the shortly. And so we're going to pick up another couple of minutes, and Mars 76 will explain exactly why the three adepts came to Earth.
Among these adepts are three who are specially trained to deal with centers of black magic now being practiced upon your lower realms. One of these adepts, as you already know, you know. It has been decided that these realms must be cleared through the process of spiritual transmutation of these dark forces, so that terrestrial man may evolve faster, if that is the right word, than he does at the moment.
You gotta love that quirk by Mars Sector 6. I mean, don't forget, he's undoubtedly been watching us for 18 million years, waiting for us to evolve. And so here he says, so that it allows mankind to evolve faster, if that's the right word. Because faster to him, 18 million years is like, oh. Must be incredibly frustrating for the cosmic masters. So this was another extremely important move, was clearing out the lower astral realms of these entities that were holding us back. Now, entities that we created, but no one on earth, including the spiritual hierarchy, including the Great White Brotherhood, who of course have evolved beyond our lessons and could have gone off earth, but they stayed back. Even the Great White Brotherhood were completely unable to deal with the power, the tremendous power of evil on the lower astral realms. They had to bring in outside help to do that. And that was what the Adepts did, and that was completed in 1969. All right, now the next major card to be played in the cosmic plan is the next master. Of course, that was the one that most of the other religions and philosophies spoke about. It's kind of the most exciting one, you know, the next master. And that's really what's happening now. There's this great preparation phase of the coming of the next master. We've been told that the next master will come, well, our master, Dr. King, said that he would come within 100 years. He never said specifically, but he also, I guess one time he said that he could say exactly when the next master will come when we're ready. You know? But he did say on one occasion that he's not talking about 100 years. So the clue was it'd be less than 100 years. And that was a lecture he gave back in the, I think, 70s or 80s. So I throw that out there. But the thing to remember about the coming of the next master is not going to come and then everything's good. Let's see. He's not going to like come and then fix all of our problems, and then we all kind of go skipping rope into the golden millennium. That's not the way it's going to happen. First, we'll play over Mars Sector 6, describing the next master, his coming, and then I'll read the actual the declaration given in 1958. So let's start now with the next extract on the next master.
The radiations, the energies which will emanate from satellite number 3 during this projected presence. These are the ways that we are helping you at the moment. Why are we doing this? We are preparing a ground, preparing a platform for one other planetary entity to come among you. When he does so, you will know. When he does so, he will adopt an approach which is quite different from the approach adopted by that master you call Jesus. The next master will come as a great adept who will lead the thinking men into the realms of deeper metaphysics. Thus do we hope, with your cooperation to make right the wrongs caused by a few black magicians upon terror who have purposely involved the very foundation of this present age.
So get the idea there. The next master is going to come openly, and he's going, and what Master the Six is saying is that they, the cosmic masters, are currently preparing the way for this next master. The adepts were preparing the way for the next master. Our master, Dr. King, was preparing the way for the next master. And the next master, we have more information given in 1958. Let's go to that slide. This was the Lord's declaration given to Dr. King when he was charging one of those 19 holy mountains in England, Brown Willie, in 1958. And this is that. There will shortly come another among you. He will stand tall among men with a shining countenance. This one will be attired in a single garment of the type now known to you, from those single space suits. His shoes will be soft-topped, yet not made of the skin of animals. He will approach the earth leaders. They will ask of him his credentials. He will produce these. In other words, he will be allowed to prove who he is. His magic will be greater than any upon the earth, greater than the combined materialistic might of all the armies. And they who heed not his words shall be removed from the earth. This rock is now holy and will remain so for as long as the world exists. Go ye forth and spread my word throughout the world, so that all men of pure heart may prepare for his coming. So there's lots of clues in there. One is he will, the magic will be greater than any upon the earth, greater than the combined materialistic might of all the armies. So clearly, he's not going to come too far down that timeline, because by then we won't have, hopefully, any armies and won't be fighting each other. So it's going to be fairly soon when we still have armies and we still have leaders, plural, not the earth leader, still have countries. Now, one thing I want to make clear, though, where he says, they who heed not his words shall be removed from the earth. It does not mean he's going to go around and zapping people, and then they go to the next planet. You know, I did have a conversation one time with Dr. King about the next master. And the indication that I got from this conversation was that the next master won't necessarily be here for that long. You know, don't forget the Master Jesus, the Lord Buddha, Sri Krishna. They were born into an earth physical body and they lived a life. The next master will come in a flying saucer, openly, and land. He might stay a week, a month, a year, but the indication is not going to be a really long time. So he's going to come into this world, which is probably somewhat similar to what we are today, maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Not too much longer than that is the indication. And he's going to prove that there are cosmic masters. Prove that there are great spiritual beings beyond earth. Prove that our lesson is to raise the Kundalini. Our lesson is to give service to others. He's going to make these statements very clearly and be able to back it up and then go. But you can imagine that everyone is not going to all of a sudden drop everything and say, oh, let's do that. Probably not. Anyone who has a spiritual bent probably will. Hopefully it'll fire up all the spiritual faiths. But those who are completely entrenched in materialism, you know, once the next master leaves and they find that they're still around, they can still be driving their cars and doing their stuff, they're going to start to rally forces against what he was teaching. So the indication, again, from Dr. King was that that's when our work, and when I say our, I mean the spiritual workers, that's when our work as spiritual workers will really become even more important. So the big difference in here is that the next master is not going to come, fix everything, then we got the great golden age. He's going to come, lay it down, prove that this stuff exists, and then go, and then we got to then deal with it. Then we've got to push it ourselves. Because don't forget, it's our mess. Not their mess, it's our mess. We've got to solve this problem ourselves. And so that's the next master. We'd all like to have somebody come and fix our problems. It's also been stated that we are in the time of science. The Master Jesus came 2,000 years ago into the time of emotion. And that was the message that he gave, love and service. The new age now is the age of science. And I think we can all believe, especially with Paul's slide about the atom bomb, that science hasn't gotten off to a very good start, shall we say. It's not really being used to help people. So it is, of course, but it's also being used in a lot of detrimental ways. And the next phase is going to be to take this science and make science help evolve mankind. And so Dr. King, one of the key ways that he was helping prepare the way for the next master, helping in the cosmic plan, was to teach us how to use science in an extremely spiritual way. And he took radionics and created amazing missions. Here's Dr. King designing the spiritual energy radiator, which is also right here. And here's Operation Prayer Power with a battery. And here's another battery in the Saturn mission. And I don't have time to go into all these missions, but they're basically he developed radionics that could take spiritual energy, compress it, store it, and then use it in certain ways. And he also was able to get the cosmic masters and other adepts around the earth to agree to help us with our discharge of this energy. And I'll give you a brief example. Yesterday we were concerned about the unrest in the Middle East caused by that film somebody put out in America, and we also were concerned about a hurricane or typhoon that was approaching Japan. And so we used some of this equipment that a master gave us and left in our hands. We arranged for energy from one of our batteries and two of our spiritual energy radiators to send out energy, and we requested that cosmic masters would help manipulate this energy to where we were targeting it. And yesterday we targeted it towards the Middle East to try and ease some of that situation over there. And when I woke up this morning and I looked on Google News, I'm sure I'm not the only one that does Google News, the headline was, things have settled down in the Middle East. It's bad in Australia. We didn't know to target Australia. We targeted the Middle East. And so it settled down in the Middle East. And this is one small aspect of the tremendous difference that Dr. King has given us, or has made for mankind. He's allowed us to help to use science in ways to help our world in a very potent way. And I'd like to play over a quick extract now for Operation Prayer Power, which is another way of using this radionic science.
Many years ago, I warned you men of Terra that these were the last days of the old order, that you would be given every opportunity in ways which were possible to you to help your fellow men and yourself. Those were not idle words. That was an aspect of divine truth, and that has happened. If you did not recognize it, then you will have to answer to karma for your own inaction. When Operation Prayer Power was made an aspect of the cosmic plan for the salvation and enlightenment of mankind, its power was lodged in all records upon Terra and all records above Terra, even the records of the Supreme Council.
So that's Operation Prayer Power he's talking about, is taking a radionic battery, putting it in the middle of this room, for example. We also do it 5 other places. And you do Tibetan mantra and the 12 blessings, and you fill energy into this battery, uplifting, beautiful love energy into a battery. It gets compressed, and then you can release it in a fraction of the time that it took to charge it. So it's extremely concentrated spiritual power. This can then be picked up by one of the adepts or one of the cosmic masters and directed to areas where we request that it is sent to. And it's an extremely potent way of helping mankind. And that was why the cosmic masters then accepted that as a part of this very important cosmic plan for the salvation and enlightenment of mankind. So again, this is just one small aspect, one just tip of the iceberg of what Dr. King laid the groundwork for to help mankind move forward. The next thing, if you notice, the next thing is it coming to the next master? Again, we don't know quite when that is, but again, he's going to come, then he's going to go. And we still will not be we will not have finished this great change yet. The next aspect of the great change is in working more and more closely with the Great White Brotherhood. Because again, the Great White Brotherhood, these are beings like us, only they're ahead of us. And they were humans. They learned their lesson of raising the Kundalini, being of service to others. They raised the Kundalini, and they were able to leave Earth and go on to another world. But they chose to hold themselves back for us. And so they've been what they've called holding the light around Earth so that we wouldn't perish virtually. And again, another group of individuals that we owe our existence to, who've been helping us for millions of years. And so this is all leading up to not only the next master, but also working with the Great White Brotherhood. And then let's listen to the next quote, which gives kind of an idea of the future of especially the Aetherius Society, but also other groups that, of course, are being more and more active to help hold the light and to help this cosmic plan. Let's listen to the next extract.
You will be holding the light. You will be bringing into manifestation the light on a basic level which has been held by the Great White Brotherhood. When you do this, then your ranks will be supplemented by masters in the Great White Brotherhood. These will guide you how to even more potently hold the light for a terra, so that you can be very active in helping all of mankind. By this time, you will have the Aetherius Society will have lived through many political and military upheavals, two of them particularly violent.
So a couple of things about that. One is, in that same transmission, he mentioned that this will be after we will have been in the Aetherius Society for 2 or 3 lives. Okay, so again, it gives you an indication of the time here. So 2 or 3 lives is what? 300 years? 400 years? 200 years, depending on the length of the life. So again, this is some time in the future, but it's not past 1,000 years. Another thing is that in preparation for the Great White Brotherhood, and I hope it's not necessary to say, but the Great White Brotherhood is not skin color, it's white magic. There's more non-whites in the White Brotherhood than there are whites. But just throw that out there. Probably a good thing. But they are moving closer and closer, and also the Brotherhood is not only brothers, it's also women and men. But they're coming closer and closer. Three places they're coming closer to humanity was in response to the 19 holy mountains charged. And this one down here is Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. Down here is Ben McDewey in Scotland. And up here is Castle Peak in Colorado. And all those, so these are now inhabited by members of the spiritual hierarchy. This is one that's also been around for some time, Mount Shasta, up in the Northern California. Also in America, there's one of the Grand Tetons up near Yellowstone. So they're moving closer and closer. They're moving away from the Himalayas, where they've been for millions of years, and they're coming closer and closer to humanity. Again, preparing the way for closer contact and ultimate working with people of our stature. What does all this mean to you? And I hope you get a bit of an idea that this great change it's a long-term thing. It's not going to happen December 21st this year. It's a long-term thing, but it's in comparison to our 18 million years, it's going to be a fast thing. And you are fortunate in that you know an awful lot about it. You're fortunate that you feel, otherwise you wouldn't be here, you feel a spiritual bent in your life. And I hope that what Paul and I put over today will help you feel that it's really important to pick up the pace of your spiritual development now, and especially during satellite number 3's orbit, which we have the dates for every year, and especially, of course, in a selfless manner. In the Aetherius Society, we offer many ways of doing this. We have power circles every Monday at 8 p.m. We have Operation Prayer Power, which Master Aetherius talked about. That's every Thursday at 7:45 p.m. We have spiritual healing, which you can learn to give healing, and then you can either receive healing or give healing every Tuesday evening starting at 7:30. And of course, we have regular pilgrimages to Mount Baldy. This one is the World Peace Pilgrimage, which we hold once a year for all faiths. We also have 5 other pilgrimages that are designed for performing the 12 blessings. And I'd like to just close with one last extract where Mars Sector 6, I think, really gives us kind of a rally call at the end.
Never in the history of any planet within the solar system have so few life streams been offered such a divine opportunity as that now offered to the good, right-thinking, open-minded man upon Terra. In the darkness, O my brothers, shines the smallest light. This is the responsibility of the present age. Death or life in abundance. Make your choice now, and if you choose rightly, mark this promise well, O friends. We will help you in every way to bring about this state into manifestation upon your earth. Choose well, stand fast, and know God.